Hey, what's up, YouTube? Welcome to another episode of the story of Emmanuel Pierce. This is season 3, man. You guys better get hyped for this. If you don't know, you won't know. I am joined by the human version of period cramps, Michael Bowie.
You know what? You're so funny, Manny. I'm so glad that you gave me that warm welcome. I just appreciate when you give me welcomes to make me feel at home. So I just felt like maybe I should give you a welcome to make you feel at home.
I would not sit it. All right, I lost that one. Yeah, I lost that one. Go ahead. All right, go ahead, motherfucker. I lost that one. That's fine.
Oh, we're good now? Okay, well, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. We are back. Toast to you and that song. Cheers. I want to just say thank you, Emmanuel Pierce. We're back. We're live. We were talking last week about your years in college.
No, I think last week we were talking about the fact that your head is big enough for someone to shave little 3 holes in it, roll it down a bowling alley like a bowling ball. I think that's what we were talking about.
I hope the legs on your chairs are made out of titanium or vibranium. But it's very good. I want to just thank you that you are here, stopping by once again on the story of to share your moments in life and everything that you've been through. Last week we talked about your final years inside of college before going to law school. So now we're at a point. We're moving up to law school. Where did you go? And what was that experience like? Because not the percentage of people that actually go to law school can get into law school and make it through law school. I don't know what that is, but I'm sure that it's a very small number. So I'm sure that experience is different than college. And definitely, depending on where you went, how was that experience overall?
Well, I know you went to Milk Dud University, so we'll just start out with that. I went to the University of Iowa College of Law. Iowa is the top 25 law school in the nation, so shouts out to the University of Iowa. What was that? What was my experience like? Well, I can tell you it was it was different. Eastern is not like a top university. Cass it's just the truth. Cass was a really good high school for like college preparatory, but Kennedy wasn't like that either. So this is my first time like being at a school where they really, really challenge you. And I hadn't had that before. So my first semester walking in the door was kind of crazy. I did not know. I was kind of playing this all by ear. I knew I wanted to go in law school. I did all the stuff that was required for me to get in law school. And I got in law school and I showed up the first day, which was.
What was that though?
The first day. It was in August. It was, I think it was my birthday. I think my first day at law school was my birthday.
Okay. All right. No, but backtrack though. What did you have to do to get into law school? Like,
so
applying to Eastern.
Well, you don't have to take a test to get into Eastern. So you have to take the LSAT. Which is like the law school version of the SAT or the ACT. Kind of like, you take that, but your score doesn't need to be super high to get into Eastern. Let's just, like Michael said, they'll take anybody with a pulse.
They gotta meet them numbers. They'll take anybody.
What else?
Yeah. So you have to take the LSAT. You have to get like 3 letters of recommendation, and then fill out the applications and pay for each application. And then you write a personal statement, which you don't do for college either. So that's a little bit different. And then the criteria for picking people is different everywhere you go for law school. The criteria for college is kind of the same, just depending on what school you are. Law schools have a variety of approaches, and Iowa's approach is kind of like like a wholeness thing. They want to know who you are as a person, not just what you scored on the LSAT. Obviously, you have to get good grades in college, getting good grades in college, different things like that. So those are kind of the criteria to get into law school. So I got into Iowa, and I didn't know what to expect. I found out a lot of things like on my like first orientation kind of week. One, I did not know that in law school you were graded against each other. So that was a shock my first day there. So it's like there's a certain amount of A's to give out, there's a certain amount of B's to give out, there's a certain amount of C's to give out. Even if you do A work, right, you could still not get an A.
Because somebody else's work was better.
Yeah.
Is that just that school, or is that how all law schools are structured?
That's how all law schools work. That is how law school in general works. Because law is a competitive environment and they want to breathe that in you very early.
Can you still finish law school even though you got C's?
Yeah. You just won't, your opportunities for jobs may be a little less than everybody else. You won't be at the top of your class or anything like that. You won't be able to go to a big law firm or anything like that. That's what most of that is for, is kind of weeding people out for jobs, essentially. But yeah, it's a competitive part of law school that I was not aware of.
I didn't know about that either.
Yeah.
And so just out of curiosity, did you ever get any of those C's?
So my first semester in law school was a struggle, again, because I was adapting. I didn't know anybody who was a lawyer I knew people who were lawyers, but nobody who was going to help me or who had been through law school that would help me. So I struggled that first semester. I think I got a 2.8. I got a couple C's, but that next semester I bounced right back. I had like a 3.8 GPA. So like my first semester in law school was my worst semester by far. I knocked it out of the park after that. So that was my adjustment period.
What was your train thought going into law school, as far as, because last episode, if the viewers at home don't know, make sure you go watch it. Last episode, you talked to us about how there was money involved, right, for you to go to law school.
Right.
So how did that affect your GPA and your train of thought as to, like, I have to keep my GPA at a certain level, or did that not even apply to you?
It didn't apply to me. I was pretty much set with what I had. So like I didn't really have a need to worry about what was really going on. Mostly my train of thought was everybody's trying not to look stupid, right? There are myriad ways the law school is different. One of the ways is teachers don't ask you. You know how teachers get up in front of the class and they ask a question and they look for someone to raise their hand and volunteer? That's not how it works. When you're in law school, they call on you. And when you're on, you're on.
Like, I'd be fucked because I avoid people like it's nothing. Cheers to that.
and you don't know when you're going to be called. So you have to do like the reading and the homework every single, like you have to be prepared.
I figured it out to a science. Stay in the back, everything. Now people are just purposely calling on you.
It doesn't matter where you are.
Especially now with the glare of the lights coming off your head, you're going to be the main center of attention.
No, well, I remember my first,
because they might step on you, but keep going. Cheers to that.
I remember my first day in my first class was property, and this is when it happened. Like this is when it breaks you into what law school really is. So there was a girl, her name was Amber, and she got called on. Very first person called on in class, and his question to her was, "What do you own in your apartment?" Seems like a simple question, right?
Yeah.
But when everybody is staring at you, you don't want to look stupid, and you need to give right answers. It's harder. And then if you're not giving the answer that they want, they ask you more questions.
They don't know what the hell's in your apartment. How is it a wrong answer to that?
There is a right answer. What you own in your apartment is only the stuff, like your personal belongings. You don't actually own any of the walls, or say they provided a refrigerator. You don't own that. You don't own a stove. But like we're sitting here having a rational, calm conversation. None of us are on the spot trying to answer that question as the first question of your first day of law school.
I'd be in tears on first day. Like, stop asking me so many questions.
Yeah. So that is different. There are no volunteers. You will be voluntold. They will call on you, and you don't know when they're going to call on you. So you got to be on point. Like I said, my first semester was kind of crazy. I had to miss a couple classes because my wife's brother was getting married. So we went to St. Lucia for his wedding, and I came back. Luckily, I had done the reading, but I came back, and he called on me literally when I got back.
Yeah.
So you have to be like prepared no matter what. And the lesson is, lawyers are supposed to think on their feet, and they're always supposed to be prepared. Even when you're on vacation, you're not on vacation. So that was the lesson that I took from that. But yeah, the first semester was a huge adjustment because it's not like regular school. It's just not.
So let me ask this: being away from certain people, were there any individuals that you were far away from, and how did that pan out? I know just for me in my life, going away and being far away in a different state or even a different city, that can be sometimes troubling. So usually you have that backbone that, when somebody's near you, that can kind of be that soothing part to help you get through that fact. Did you have that? And if not, how did you deal with that?
Yeah. So one other quick thing too, just about law school. There's one test for your grade, and it's at the end of the semester. There's not like there are no assignments to help you boost your grade or anything. It's one test at the end of the semester, and that is your grade for the class. So there's that too. As far as my support system goes, when I moved away, my then fiance, who was not my wife, moved with me. So that was my support system when I got there. And then that branched off we joined a church, and that branched off to the church, which gave me an additional support system. And obviously I made friends there in law school, which gave me even more of a support system for people who are kind of going through what I was going through at the same time.
I want to sort of backtrack, if I may, Michael. Thank you. Last week, I sort of unintentionally asked you a little bit about the classes that you took in law school, right? And you briefly told us a little bit about it, right? Because I was interested in sort of your knowledge with sort of immigration law, if you will. Can you speak a little more about the classes that you took in law school? I mean, some of the classes that you might not think that you have to take.
Yeah. So your first year is pretty much planned out for you. You get one elective, I think, your second semester, if I'm remembering it right. But your whole first year, your classes are planned for you. So the first semester you take legal writing, you take property, torts, and contracts. So that's your first semester in law school at Iowa. Those are the classes you will take. You won't take any other classes. They assign your classes. Those are the ones you take. Your second semester is the same way. Civil procedure, criminal procedure, and there's a couple of other classes I'm forgetting. And then LAWR2, which is legal writing, the second version of that. And then you take an elective or whatever. One of the classes you can pick. I forget what I took. And then going into my summer, I wanted to get a jump on my credits. So I took like a mock trial, kind of criminal trial class before I headed into my internship. And then my second year, I picked all of my classes in my third year. So I took immigration, I took so many classes, anything that sounded interesting, public health law, stuff that sounded interesting to me, sports law. I took that.
What did you find interesting about sort of your immigration law class, or what attracted you to that?
I like the professor, and they're very well known in the space. His name is Brahm Elias. He's very well known in the space, immigration law. He ran the immigration clinic at Iowa. He's no longer at Iowa. He's at another university. But he was great. He is a great professor. To spark your mind, I had heard great things about the class. Minus African Americans to this country, everybody else is immigrants. So.
No, that's some real shit. I heard African Americans are the only minority that cannot be deported or be sent back home.
There's no where are you going to send us to?
Exactly right. So that's no, yeah. That's absolutely. I was looking over here like he don't know what to think, but it's true. I mean, what Manny just said is true. Absolutely true. Yeah. Go ahead, keep preaching, brother. Go ahead.
Minus African Americans and Native Americans. I'm sorry, got to be politically correct here. Everybody else in this country is an immigrant. So that, he did a lot of good teaching, and I learned a lot about immigration, and plus what I was doing at the time, which was the federal defense clinic ties into immigration. You know, we had a lot of clients who were not here, not documented here, and therefore, you know, you get a federal charge with that. Like that comes with a federal charge, and you have to go through that process. And then you go through the other process, or sometimes some people just go through one process and they don't go through the other, depending on what they've done. Like we had a lot of people who committed a crime and then they get the extra immigration charges. So
Let me ask the burning question, because you've gone through your entire life. We've gone through now 7 episodes, and we've learned all about you, and even more or less your relationships in general, the multiple ones with girls, but more specifically the one with your father. Your father is in prison for life. Yeah. So he is not privy to having had gone through all of these experiences while you're going through law school. How did your relationship change? Because I've noticed that through each stage, you know, elementary, junior high, high school, as you grew, things got difficult. And how was that relationship? How did things pan out with that?
So when I first went to law school, like I said, my then fiance, who was not my wife, was kind of pressuring me to talk to my dad a little more, to answer the phone when he called. So I started doing that. I started talking to him more, and we started to work on our relationship, and then I took a trip when I came back for Christmas that year, my first year in law school. I actually went to see him. And she encouraged me to do that as well. Without her, my relationship with my dad would not be where it is today. So I went to visit him, and we sat down and we just talked about it. And I got a lot of stuff that I wanted to say off of my chest. You know, we had a heart-to-heart conversation.
Like what?
You know,
what kinds of things?
I just kind of told him, like, it really upset me that you weren't there for a lot of my life. Like, it bothered me. You weren't there to see me accomplish all these things, and now I'm doing something bigger, and you're still not here. Like,
and what's his response to something like that?
He just apologizes, and he says, you know, it's not that I didn't want to be there, and I know that my actions put me here, but I'm not. You have a right to feel the way that you want to feel, but I still want to have a good relationship with you. You know, like he's always been understanding. Always been understanding of the way I feel and the situation and like everything that's going on. And he never puts the blame on me. So, you know, I appreciate that. So we had a heart to heart, and, you know, things came up like, you know, me stopping playing sports for a couple of years. I felt like my mom just kind of like, you know, she couldn't afford to do certain things and to take me certain places, you know, and like, that stopped me from doing stuff that I wanted to do. And I felt like if he was there, that wouldn't have happened. Or times where like I ran into walls on things or I needed to get better at something, he would have been there to give me that extra push. And so that was the conversation that we had. And I felt like, you know, our relationship grew from that conversation. And, you know, we came out of it with an understanding of just like love and support. And from then on in, like, pretty much I went to see him every time I went home. So like we started visiting more, and different things like that. And when I got back, through my second year of law school, after I got back, I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna start looking into his case to see how I could help him, you know? So I started looking into his case. The summer of my 2L year, my first internship was with the Vikings. So I went to intern with the Vikings, and that was for like, I want to say like a month and a half or something like that. So I had a back half of my summer that I had to fill. And so I started early in the federal criminal defense clinic at the law school. And while I was there, like in my downtime when I didn't have anything to do, I would just start trying to pull stuff up on his case, like news clips or, you know, his case files or anything that I could find. And I came across one of the news clips about his crime or whatever. And I read it and I read the date on it, and it was like in September of 93, I want to say, or something like that. So, and they had already talked about bringing him into custody in September of 93. So in my mind, I'm like still just reading it, trying to get the facts of what had happened, but then it clicked. I'm like, September of 93. I was born in 94. Like, something is not adding. If he's been in jail, right? And like, I know from all the other stuff that I found, he was never given bail. He was never given bond for this charge, especially when you get murder.
They don't allow conjugal visits?
No. when you get a murder charge, and on top of that, he had a previous criminal history, they're not going to give you bond. Like, that is not happening. So then, the wheels start turning in my mind. I'm like, 1993, that does not make sense. If he's my father, he would have had to have been out of prison. So, I'm just thinking. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, explain that. Because what do you mean? 93, you were born in 94?
Mm-hmm.
There's no, what are you talking about? Like, how does that not make any sense?
I was born in August 1994, right? So this is what I mean. The wheels in my head are turning, right? If he is in jail already, no bond, it's September of 93, right? And you just count the months back, right? So July, June, May, April, March, February, January, December, and not even 9 months is November, right? So there's a significant time gap where he is not there to even conceive a child. At most, I was conceived in November, right? Late October, November. If he's already in jail with no bond in September, to me, in my mind, I'm like, okay, what's going on? And so I sat at my desk just doing this math over and over and over again, like trying to get these 9 months to actually line up, but they never did. And so then I'm just thinking, I'm like, okay, is this man, like, is he my father? Like, that's when the questions started coming in my head, like, okay, what is going on here? So I'm like, maybe this news thing is just misdated. I need to go, I need to go find another source. Maybe the source is just misdated, or it's been so long, it's been years, decades. Maybe it's just misdated. I need to go find another source. So I go and I find another source, same date. So I'm like, okay, what is going on? So I'm doing the math. I'm at my desk still. All of this is in like a 45 to an hour time span where I'm at my desk at work, with nothing to do, just kind of doing freelancing. And I'm just doing the math in my head again. And then, the room just starts getting really small. There are other people there that were working for the summer too. And then the professor that I was working for, and the room just starts getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I'm like, okay, I have to get out of here, because like, I don't know what's going on. And like, I need to talk to somebody about this, because this math is not lining up. And in my head, I'm saying there's no way he can be my father. So something has to be happening here. So I went to go talk to the professor that I worked for. Her name was Allison Guernsey. And I was like, listen, I am so sorry, but I have something that is happening right now, and I need to leave early to figure this out. And she was like, she was always cool with that. Like, she never, she didn't make a big deal about it or anything like that. She was like, go handle what you need to handle. So I lived 10 minutes walking distance away from the law school. So I walked back and forth, didn't need a car or anything like that. I walked back and forth to the school. So I walked, as I'm walking home, I'm like doing the math again in my head, and just all these thoughts are coming in like, okay, is he my father? Is he not my father? Like, I don't want to believe that he's not my father, but the math and the news and the stuff that I have is saying that he is not. So I got home, I want to say, and Annie was there, Annie, who's my wife, was there. And I kind of like, started to, tell her what was going on. I'm like, I don't know. And then I just started thinking, should I reach out to my mom?
Yeah.
And ask her, should I just ask her this question to put it to bed to stop my mind from racing? Like, let's get some answers. And so I texted, I didn't call her. I texted my mom. I texted her a very simple text. Is he my father? And then she texted me back, what? And I said to her, I said, is he my father? And she was like, why are you asking that? And I said, well, because I've been doing some research on his case. And he was locked up in September of 93. If I was born in August of 94, that does not make sense. And so she didn't text me back. She called me and she was just crying. And then, she told me the story pretty much. She went to a party, had sex with some guy. His name is Raymond. And, she was pregnant and they could not find him afterwards. But her explanation for it is that she didn't want me to feel like I was fatherless. So she said that he was my father, and everybody knew. My granddad knew. My grandmother knew. But, both my everybody knew but me.
Why do you think that's the case? Did you ask? Like, I hear you saying that she didn't want you to feel fatherless, but would that have made a difference if you did know early like everybody else? Would that have changed anything?
I don't know. I feel like the path that my life has taken has been shaped by my circumstances and me thinking that, my dad was in prison for the rest of my life. And I feel like that kind of shaped and molded who I was as a person. So maybe I would be a different person. Who's to say? I don't know. I feel like every little thing that touches our life changes us and shapes our life in some little way. So, maybe, but, she felt it was more beneficial for that. And, my grandma and my grandfather knew because they were there when it happened. When she got pregnant, she had to tell them.
Was she ever intending to tell you? I mean, when you get older to a point where it doesn't matter anymore. You don't need to hide anything. I mean, was there a point where she was intending to tell you this? I mean, you've gone through your entire life knowing this man that's in prison as being your father, and then in your later years you find out that he's not.
Mm-hmm. She always, and he said this too because he called me too afterwards, and I'll say what we talked about.
That's the other question. I mean, why didn't he say anything all these years?
Both of them told me that they were always waiting for a right time, but there was never a right time. I mean, when you're keeping secrets, there is never going to be a right time. Especially stuff like that. There's never, ever going to be a right time. But, I will say, she said he's always stepped up in the way that he could. He wanted to be there for you. And it kind of unearthed what the tension was when I was younger. And so I told you guys to keep track of that. The tension of the situation was that he was not my father. That was a part of what they were arguing about. And at the time when she got pregnant, they were still together, supposedly. So that was also a source of what the tension was. You're muted. Sorry, you're muted. Michael, you're muted. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So she got knocked up by your father, your biological father, and started dating this other man who ended up going to prison. So then they had
they were together before that. So the guy that I've known as my whole life as my dad, they were actually together before that.
Wow. So did they have some kind of conversation where she said like, "Hey, I don't want him to be fatherless. Would you pretend to be his father his entire life?"
I assumed this had to be set up, and he stepped up to the plate, which, I commend him for doing that. Because that is pulling fire out of a situation where you don't even need to be involved. Like,
Not only that, but it's commendable because he took on your actual biological father's heat from not being there.
Yeah.
For not being there.
He took on all the grief, all the pain, all the, just everything that somebody who didn't have to deal with it on top of dealing with his own situation, like that takes a man of tremendous strength, I would say. And so that's why I will always have respect and love and admiration for him, because that he did something he didn't have to do. So I appreciated that. And then, my conversation with him was just kind of like, I asked him why he didn't tell me. And, he said the same thing. We were just searching for the right time to tell you, we didn't know. And my another response that I had, because I was really angry, like I'm calm about it now, but I was really angry. I'm like, so you guys were just going to lie to me for the rest of my life and then have me lie to my children and have them lie to their children. So I'm just building a whole foundation on lies. Like that was my thing. It's like you built a foundation of my life on a lie. And like, no one thought to correct that. And that's a problem. For me, that was a huge issue. Nobody likes being lied to. And then for me to find out on my own is what hurt me the most. It's like you all didn't have the courage to step up and tell me the truth. I had to find out by myself.
So that's how you felt when you were angry. Is that still how you feel to this day?
No. And my mom, I'll say this about my mom. She broke down, she was really fearful that our relationship would change or I would stop loving her. Or I didn't want to talk to her anymore. Like it really affected her to the point where, even now she still feels guilty and bad about it. But I will say that I'm not mad about it. Do I wish I knew the truth earlier? Yeah, that would have helped. In many ways, I wish I knew the truth earlier. Do you
understand why
I understand her position. Would
you have done the same thing if in her shoes?
I can't say that I would have done the same thing, but I understand her position. You're a single mother, not by your choice. Some guy took advantage of you at a party. That's number one. So like then you have a child out of this and you can't even find that guy anymore. So now you're a single mother with a kid. Everybody in my family wanted her to have an abortion. She didn't. So she chose to keep me. So that's number one. And then like you're trying to, every story, like, everybody says they don't want to become, just a number, just another statistic. You think about the stories of people who are fatherless, or don't know who their father is. I'm pretty sure you can think of a lot of people who were not in the position that I am in life now. So I understand it. I do understand it. I 100% understand it. It just, what it does to me is, the perspective. There are a lot of things in life that I look back on and I remember, and it gives me perspective from that view.
So I want to kind of close up the conversation on everything we talked about when your mom, you talked to your mom to find out everything, and everything was kind of unveiled at that point, and you briefly started to talk about the conversations with the man that you know as being your father throughout your life that's in prison. Elaborate more on that conversation, how that panned out, what things were said, the anger and things that were felt. How did you resolve that? What did you guys talk about to kind of get to a clear point of understanding?
Well, I would say just in that moment, there was not a clear point of understanding. I was upset, and I had every right to be upset. And nobody was going to tell me that I couldn't be upset, or tell me anything that I didn't want to hear. That was just number one. I was wronged in the situation, and everybody wanted to call my phone and try to talk me down from being angry. And I was just like, listen, you are all liars. You don't get to call me and try to tell me how to feel. That's not what we're doing. So, I talked to him about that, and, he was kind of like, don't cut everybody off. And I was just kind of going back through my life, and I'm like, one story that I kind of shared with him, and we were just kind of talking about, because we were talking about the whole thing, was I remember when my best friend lost his father. His father passed away. And we were in the car, and, he came over for another weekend, as normal. And I said to him in the car, I'm like, I'm sorry you lost your dad. I know what it's like to not have a father there. And my mom kind of quickly and very angrily kind of stopped me and was like, don't say that, like, don't say that. But in my mind, it's like, you had a lot of anger for a lie that you've created, that you had started to build up yourself in your mind. And I was like, wow, just that kind of stuff is what I kind of talked about, just thinking about that, and like thinking about how, nobody told me the truth. And that's what I was kind of telling him at the time. Is like, you didn't tell me the truth. She didn't tell me the truth, and he was like, I'm sorry. You'll always be my son, no matter what, DNA or not. And I felt like I had to step up and be there for you. And I appreciated that from him. And out of that whole situation, other than lying, he was the person that I was the least angry at. Because at the end of the day, and I told him this on the phone, you did something that you didn't have to do.
Absolutely. Before we get out of here, Michael, if I may, just one last question. I think the viewers are at home probably are wondering and asking themselves, and I know I am, but what about your biological father? I mean, you mentioned his name earlier. Is that all there is to that side of the story? Have you had any contact with him? What's the deal there?
So no, all I know is a name.
Right.
And I was encouraged by a friend. Mm-hmm. I won't say who.
It was me.
Try to start looking into it and maybe try to find him. Michael was one of the first people I called because I didn't know how to handle it. And I felt like he could give me some emotional support and some kind of guidance and stuff like that. So I called him, and that was one of the things that we talked about. And, I kind of pushed back on him initially, like, hey, I'm not going to do that. I just want to forget about this and move forward. And he was kind of like, you should really think about it still. It's important, and it's something to think about and that you should do. So all I have is a name. I don't know anything else about him. One of the things that I did to kind of, push maybe my search forward was I took an ancestry DNA test. So I took a DNA test, and I have been matching with people who I don't recognize from my mom's side of the family. And so I've been trying to investigate that way and see if I could find him. And it's not, it's not to have a relationship. I'm grown now. If that turned into that, so be it. But I'm not pushing to have a relationship with somebody that I've never known. It's more so to, maybe tell him, hey, you have a son that you don't know about, or that you never knew about. And, this is who I am. And maybe that'll help in some ways for me. Maybe that'll help in some ways for him. I don't know. My biggest fear throughout this whole thing is finding out, oh, this guy's passed away, or, he's a terrible person. That's what I'm worried about. But so far, nobody can really give me answers. All the people I've reached out to, nobody's reached out back to me. So, the search continues. I don't know anything about it, and maybe one day we will cross paths.
Well, to end on this note, a couple of things that I'm going to say in closure is that I still stick by what I said. And, sometimes when you're that friend, the first person that you're called, and you're looking for that emotional support, I hope that I gave that was needed, because you don't know what to say. That's a lot to take in, and I can't imagine being inside of that kind of situation. But at the end of the day, just how you weren't told the truth and you don't know if he wasn't told the truth, and that he knows that you're out there, and maybe he's that kind of person where if somebody was in his life, he would be in there. I know just stories from like Tiffany Haddish, who didn't know her father and was reunited after becoming an adult, in her 30s. So you never know. And at the end of the day, it sometimes is that closure. Just like wanting to know the truth from your mom, he might want to know the truth too, and you might want to know more to the truth. Why weren't you there? Did you know? Why? Where have you been? Why haven't you been there? Did you try looking? I mean, for me, my advice is still going to stay the same as it was that day, to never stop looking. Because just because you didn't find out at that point doesn't mean that you'll never find out.
Right.
You definitely could find that. And at the end of the day, you're blessed, because if you do find it, you could build a relationship, and you're more blessed because you have two fathers. If that's what he wants, to have that relationship, when some people don't have one, and so therefore I think that's something that I would never give up that hunt for. But you have one life on this planet, and to know the truth and have met all the people that are part of that truth, that life. That is yours, the story of, so to speak, I think is going to be unique. I think that we've taken in a lot and learned a lot about the story. This is definitely groundbreaking, because...
I know I'm taking in the glare on your head, so that was a lot for me.
Well, I was going to say, honestly, that this was a deep and intense kind of conversation to kind of, go to a serious note, and I really wanted to kind of make things a little bit lighter, to liven things up, and kind of not have things be so dramatic. So with that note,
your head does that on its own.
With that note, because it's so dark and so we're inside of a deep and emotional state, I want to just make sure that we're inside of a happier state.
All right, I'll see y'all next week, man. This guy doesn't bother me. Doesn't bother me. Doesn't bother me. I don't know what. Is that tequila you drinking?
Other than that, I'm sure it's tequila that you're drinking. Other than that, I just want to thank Biz Marquis, aka Big Pun, aka my chairs. It definitely is reinforced like a wrestling ring. AKA my head is as big as a black box. I mean, definitely, I just want to thank you.
Wait, did you lose weight? Were you that big dude in D12?
Excuse me, because we're running low on time. So I want to thank you for being here as a guest. I think, like I said, I mean, honestly, to be on a serious note, that's a lot to take in. And I know that on the next episode, we're going to kind of find out where you're at in your life, to end on this note where you're just finding out this information doesn't really tell your whole journey and your whole story. And I look forward to kind of finding out where it goes after that. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell, do everything. Send a little note, maybe by a pigeon's leg, right up there, or download. Whatever you guys need to do, let us know inside the comments. And if you ever want to be a guest here on The Story Of and share your story, definitely hit us up and we can try and put you on. I want to thank everybody for joining us, and as always, we will check you guys out next week.
Whatever you do, don't hurt me, please. Don't let me down.